with great power comes... Just start the review. Brightburn stars Elizabeth Banks, David Denman, Jackson A. Dunn, and is directed by David Urevsky. What's up, guys? Time for another brand new 2019 movie review. Brightburn is a James Gunn production, and right away that grabbed my attention because we all know James Gunn, Guardians of the Galaxy. He's going to be doing the Suicide Squad pretty soon. Suicide Squad 2. I am a massive Superman fan. Let's get that out of the way right now. My top two are the Hulk and Superman. You know, the first movie I ever saw in the theater was Superman 2. So the first time I saw this trailer, right away it screams evil Superman. And it pretty much lets you know that, from the get-go when you watch this movie. I mean, you have Kent Farm there, with Smallville. And you have all those, iconic moments. Hell, the barn with the alien spacecraft. It's all there. And you'll see little Easter eggs throughout the movie. So you can tell that the writers of this, Brian and Mark Dunn, who I believe are the brothers of James Gunn. Don't quote me, but that's a big filmmaking family right there. But you can tell they're fans of Superman. And I think, people always say that Superman's not that interesting because he has so much power. I disagree. I think Superman's hella interesting if you approach him in an intelligent way. But we're not talking about Superman, we're talking about Brightburn, which is like evil Superman. Brightburn is the name of the city, Brightburn, Kansas. There's another hint for you. It's Kansas, Smallville, Kansas. And quick plot synopsis. This really is kind of a Superman story. This child crashes to Earth via this spaceship. And this young family, Tori and Kyle, played by Elizabeth Banks and David Denman, they discover this spaceship. They are trying to have a child. And this kind of makes things perfect. They end up having this young boy. And for the first 10 years, he's a normal child. You don't see any signs of him becoming evil up until a point in the story. And then all of a sudden the child, Brandon Breyer, played by Jackson A. Dunn, he gets the calling from the barn, kind of like Kal-El did. And so he goes to the barn, and then all of a sudden this is where the story really starts taking a turn. But there were little things leading up to this, As a child, it's not that the kid was picked on or anything, but if he didn't get his way, that was not a good thing at all. Now, there is this one scene with this little girl who he has a crush on, and you can see this in the trailer, he literally crushes her hand into pieces, and it's pretty jarring. So right away, you can tell that this is not a good person. There are elements of goodness there, but I think, the spaceship takes over and the evil Brandon comes out. And ultimately, Brandon just wants to take over the world. One thing I loved about this movie, actually, was it was contained. It was in a small town environment. They didn't really expand it out. They could do a sequel to this if they wanted to. But, they didn't really expand it out into, the big city. The whole movie is contained into this world. And Brandon, discovering his powers and wreaking havoc on this small town of Brightburn. And, nobody wants to believe that this is happening, especially the parents who are right there. After Brandon does what he does to the little girl, the parents don't want to believe it. One of my cons with this movie is David Denman, who plays the dad. The character himself is kind of, I don't want to say stupid, but just kind of dumb, because there's a couple moments where Brandon tosses him like he's a pillow. And so that should be a giant red flag to, you probably don't want to challenge I don't care if he's 12 years old, if he's throwing you around like you're nothing. That's a red flag to me. Probably don't want to be taking him out to the woods by yourself. And also, I was wondering, this looks like a horror version of Superman. How far in that direction are they going to go? And boy, do they. The violence is no joke in this movie, actually. The kills, just imagine Superman killing somebody. And they don't hold back on the blood. And, it's like an evil Superman. Imagine that. They give you that in this. This is a hard R judging by the kills. I was eating that shit up. The horror fan in me was eating that up, and the Superman fan in me was eating that up. Also, I really love the pacing in this movie. It takes its time to kind of develop the characters and to slowly ease into Brandon's descent into madness. because he doesn't do it right away. It takes a while until we get to the full-on Brandon evil Superman type stuff. And to me, that's payoff. You know, once it finally does, you know, all this tension is built up to that point. There are little scenes here and there where, you know, he does the killing, but they save all the great stuff for the end. And the ending of this movie is fantastic. Like, for me, I loved how it ended, because you could end this thing in quite a few different ways. And I enjoyed the direction they took so much that I want to talk a little bit of spoiler stuff after the rating, because there's a couple things I definitely want to mention. Now, I will say, I mentioned David Denman, but Elizabeth Banks is actually really good in this. You know, to me, she is kind of the anchor of this whole thing, really kind of the main character, because she's dealing with all these emotions. She loves her son. You can tell she loves her son so much. And so she's constantly conflicted about this whole thing. So she's presented with these choices along the way, like, I really have to turn in my son because he is a danger to society. How would you react to that? It presents those questions quite well, actually. And Elizabeth Banks does a fantastic job handling that character. You know, there's quite a few emotional moments that she has to deal with, especially in the last act. And also it presents, you know, these questions like, how would you handle this if you had a child that up to a point he was pretty normal, and then all of a sudden he's uncontrollable, and you have to, you know, if you don't turn him in, then you could be causing danger to the lives of other people. It presents a lot of those questions quite well. The things we do for our kids. Now, I already kind of presented my cons with David Denman. Really, any of the characters besides Elizabeth Banks and the kid who plays Brandon, I didn't care too much about. They were just there, I guess, really horror fodder. But overall, guys, I actually had a really good time with this. I'm going to give it, I'll give it a low purchase worthy. Surprised me. Based on the trailers, I was just wondering, you know, okay, you got a horror Superman there. How far can you take this thing? And they took it quite far, actually. So, yeah, I'm going to give it a low purchase worthy. Now, from this point on, if you haven't seen this movie, get the hell out of here. Because I want to talk a little bit of spoilers, okay? Just two things, I think. One thing, I love the end, how Tori, the mother, she figures out a way to fight Brandon. She goes back to the spaceship because there's a scene in the movie where he does get cut. He finally gets cut. So the spaceship is kind of like his kryptonite. And she uses that against him, but of course he stops her. And then he takes her through the roof. And at first, when he goes through that roof, I was thinking, they're probably not going to show any blood on her or anything, even though they've shown blood earlier. But no, it shows what it would be like if a normal person like you and me went straight through a barn roof. And her face is all bloody. And it was a pretty effective scene. And just the look on her face, great acting by Elizabeth Banks in this scene, by the way. But the look on her face as she's going up, up into the sky, knowing that he's going to drop her, which he does, that was a really creepy scene, actually. So that really brought out those strong horror vibes. And really, sadness because she is defeated. Brandon has won. And then the next thing I want to talk about is how this really left this open for a whole world. This is world building because you have Michael Rooker, which is like the secret weapon of James Gunn at the end, and he's just like this guy on the news, and he's talking about all these threats that came from space. And Brandon just being one of the threats. There's like 6 threats that we know of. There's one that looks like this witch type character, but I like that they were presenting all these options. So I would definitely be down if they did kind of a spin-off type movie based on one of those other characters, or a sequel to Brightburn. Either way, I would definitely be in. So yeah, dug this movie, guys. Enjoyed the hell out of it. So anyway, post in the comments your thoughts on Brightburn. Looking forward to hearing them. Also, be sure to come over to Killer Flicks, where we talk horror all day and every day, and on Fridays we do Free Fall Fridays. Follow me at Drumdums on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Letterboxd. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching. Have a great day, and Drumdum out.